Imagine you find the perfect partner. You fall in love, build a life together, get married, and then make plans to start a family. Sounds pretty ideal, right? Except for the part where COVID shuts down the world 48 hours after your wedding. Oh, and the part where life decides to wreak havoc on your hormones, causing you to have 2 miscarriages in the same year, forcing you to fight a battle you never asked for. How do you fight to win when all feels lost? Welcome to the Art to Heart podcast. My name is David Morin, former corporate sales guy turned poet, and this is where we explore how finding your voice and expression can help your path and your purpose find you. Today we're with Paige Pelonis, a mother of 3 angel babies, a natural-born storyteller, and a Long Beach native with a heart as big as her city. She's also the founder and executive director of City Heart, where Paige pioneers a storytelling initiative to raise awareness and serve the veterans, seniors, and unhoused families in the city of Long Beach. In today's episode, we talk about how leaning on storytelling and expression, both personally and professionally, is getting Paige through one of the most difficult chapters in her life. We also talk about how our relationships to things like food, alcohol, and even humor influence our voice so that the truths we need to express can help others feel less alone and find a space for healing in our vulnerability. Paige really brings it today, and I can't wait for you to get to know her. Let's jump in.
Yeah, I'm born and raised in Long Beach, and I'm very passionate about serving the Long Beach community and just using art, whatever form that is, true storytelling, whether that's visual, performance, music, poetry, you name it, to serve the community. And that's what I do at City Heart, which is the nonprofit that I founded at the end of 2015 and came on full-time to run earlier this year.
What was the original impetus for you to start this nonprofit? What inspired you to start it for the city of Long Beach?
So I went to Long Beach State University to study journalism and international studies and a little bit of theater because I needed to have a little bit of fun. But the journalism focus that I am passionate about is the true storytelling and lifting up stories that have impact on the community. And what I found as a news writer was that to be a true news writer, at least this is what I gained in my education, is that you need to be completely objective with the stories that you're telling. And so there's a big limitation in how involved you can be in the stories that you're telling, at least from my perspective, just to be an ethically objective journalist. And not that I disagree with that. It was just really difficult for me. It was really difficult for me to write stories about things going on in my community that I cared about and wanted to get more involved with, and then felt like, okay, well, now I'm involved, so now I can't write about it, and now there's this big conflict of interest. And so the idea was to create a space where we could use not just news-style writing and storytelling, but all forms of art. I mentioned, I've done theater for a long time, so performance is a big part of me as well, of my background. But the idea was just to bring a group of artists together from all different types of art and tell true stories about what's going on in our community in order to raise awareness. And that was the original concept. There was a group of artists that started this thing with us at the end of 2015. And pretty quickly, 6 months into that first year, we were gathering a lot of stories and we were meeting people who were experiencing different struggles and issues and things in the community that we wanted to share stories about. But we felt like, okay, now we're telling their stories and we're sort of involved and we can cross that line because this is our space, this is our platform, but we're sort of just sharing their stories and then not really serving the issues. So we started adding the community service component of City Heart. And so today, City Heart is both. It's a community service organization where we run a resource hub on the west side of Long Beach. And it also is a platform for sharing those stories, the stories that have big impact on the community. And we do that through our magazine, which comes out twice a year, and our monthly community paper, which I'm trying to be very careful about not accidentally calling it newspaper, because it's not. It's a space for poetry and photography and stories about community impact as well.
Would that be like one of your dreams to ideally be able to call this a newspaper?
No, I don't want it to be a newspaper because again, we're not news writers. We're storytellers. We're lifting up stories and showcasing, areas of the community that maybe don't have a spotlight, creating a safe platform for people to share their own stories and gain that healing experience. It's really not so much about breaking news as it is about creating a safe place for these important stories to be shared.
Yeah, I went to the awards night you had recently, a couple months ago, and there were so many incredible people just in one room. Exactly like you said, like so many different artists doing so many different things to try to impact their community. So I commend you for doing that, for leaving your job to commit to this fully, and still writing a poetry book in that process.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good segue to your poem called Grown Ass Woman.
All right. Grown ass woman. I am a big girl. When they laughed me out of our childhood clubhouse because no girls allowed, I felt my girl rain down the sides of my face while they watched my open-toothed smile fall out of place and erased every trace of me from our secret play space. I tried and tried to secret handshake my way back inside till Mom and Dad pulled me aside and said, "Paige, be a big girl." So I pressed my lips together, bit down on my tongue until I tasted metal and squeezed my eyes shut tight enough to fight back tears like those little boys' fears of my cooties couldn't crush me because I am a big girl. So big, so soon, I had to squeeze into my sister's hand-me-down shoes with my too long, too wide feet, and with their once new, now mine t-shirt stretched across my double D chest, those still so little boys now liked me best, and the rest of me grew too. But nobody really knew what to do with a child becoming woman by way of exploding out of her own skin. So I spent big years buying into big girl bullshit, like big girl won't ever be beautiful, like big girl you talk too much, like big girl don't want to eat like that, like big girl he won't ever love you, like big girl be more like your sisters, like big girl you're too young, like big girl you're too old, like big girl with the big mouth, nobody will believe you, like big girl with the big boobs, we know you wanted it, like big girl with the big dreams, why don't you shut up and settle? Big girl, can you just be smaller? But the weight of that big girl be somebody else baggage couldn't break me down into bits and pieces because I am a big girl, and the world is full of us. We are just woke up and beautiful through lashes curled and lipstick bold and every shape, shade, and size in between. We are big girl cup of coffee to greet the rising sun through bedtime stories when the day is done. We are sitting tall behind big girl desks, leading companies and sharing stories and launching revolutions, and we're not just changing the world, we're making it spin. And marching my me-sized feet to this big girl beat means following in the footsteps of any big-mouthed, full-bodied, dream-chasing, grown-ass woman who stopped shrinking, no matter who asked them to. So I will never apologize for the size of my body, my voice, or even my scars, because I am a big girl. And the way my big dances rose red and purple across my middle and along my thighs and under my arms and along the sides of my breasts could fill me with shame, like boys laughing, no girls allowed, filled me with tears. But instead, I'm filled with love that tastes like blueberry pancakes and bacon in bed on a weekend. And instead, I'm filled with hope that looks like a faint pink line whispering, maybe this belly can get even bigger. And instead, I'm filled with strength, from my big girl, nails polished and white-knuckled fist to my bare-skinned, bulging biceps that may be buried beneath my big, but still exist. And I can carry my own big, loud load of grown-ass self on my broad-bowled shoulders without flattening, because I am a big girl.
Nice.
I'm stoked that I made it all the way through that.
I'm curious. You said you made some changes to that recently. Would you mind
No, yeah. There was, so in the big girl bullshit section, I had it. I had it at one point where the second to last question was, oh no, where the last question was, can you be any smaller? And I don't remember why it came up, but my husband was like listening to me read this poem at one point, and he was like, that really doesn't make any sense, because if you're a big girl, why would they be asking you if you could be any smaller? They're asking you to be smaller. So it was like this whole nitpicky thing. So I changed that, which I definitely noticed. And those kinds of small changes like drive me crazy, because then I make them and then I'm like, no, that's not how it goes in the original. No, forget the original version. So that is the change. And then also I added the sharing stories. So in the section where I'm talking about we are big girls leading companies and launching revolutions, I added and sharing stories in there. And I added that right after I came on to City Heart full time, actually.
Well done.
Because I was sitting at my desk and feeling all cocky and like, hey, I'm doing the thing.
What was the event that led you to write that? I'm sure a poem like that was years in the making, but was there a certain event that you just kind of wanted to have this coming out grown ass woman party?
Interesting. So,
well, the reason I ask that is because when we were talking the other day, you were saying that that's received really well, even though that's kind of like cemented for you.
Yeah.
If I don't want to misspeak, but and so yeah, so like I mean that's still powerful to receive for a lot of new ears, and so like what could they do to kind of write their own poem? What kind of inspired you? That was the context behind that question.
Yeah. I think sometimes, actually probably not even sometimes, probably a lot of the time, some like the stuff that I write and like sort of putting out into the world, like social media or with friends and family or whatever. Sometimes, a lot of the time, it's stuff that I'm putting out there because it's stuff that I need to hear. And so this poem, like writing it was one thing, and sort of piecing it together and the idea of taking like the, come on, grow up, like be a big girl kind of concept, and now taking it on as like, actually I am. And that's rad. I needed that. I got married on March 14th, 2020. And then 48 hours, the whole world shut down. And, so COVID.
48 hours?
Yeah. It was Saturday, March 14th, and Monday is when everything shut down. So, wedding, like brides get a little nuts about how they're going to look on their wedding. And I had put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I wanted to look a certain way. And right after we got married, I don't know if it was stress or what, but that's when I was diagnosed with PCOS right after we got married, because I had gained like 45 pounds, like a month after our wedding.
What is PCOS? It's
polycystic ovarian syndrome, which just means it's a hormonal condition. You have cysts in your ovaries, and it can be it can make you gain a lot of weight. It doesn't always, but it can. It can cause a lot of just like unpleasant things for women, and it can also make fertility pretty tough, and carrying a child to term pretty difficult. So what happened was I got married. 48 hours later, the world shut down. And then about a month in, I was working from home, and my husband was working in person at his job on the front lines, working with folks experiencing housing insecurity. And so he was gone all day, and I'm alone at home, and I'm just like expanding. I was just like expanding, and I couldn't figure out why. And it was super depressing. And of course we thought like, we're pregnant. Yeah, this is awesome. But that was not the case at all. So it turned out that it was PCOS, and that was really depressing. I'm someone who's always been super insecure about my size and about like just how I look. And it's not a wonderful experience to have, being that insecure, but I needed this poem. I needed this poem so that I could actually just be really, really okay with not just my large personality, which I've always loved about myself, but my physically large presence.
Wow, that is all news to me, yo. Dang. Wow. So I want to thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
So did you have that same desire to want that grown-ass woman before PCOS, or was PCOS is the event that made you write it to feel more comfortable about yourself and with yourself and what you're dealing with?
Yes, the second thing for sure.
Okay.
My workout health life before getting married, like before that marriage, and then right after that PCOS, I felt pretty in control of what I was presenting to the world physically, and then it was completely out of my control. And I'm wrapping my mind around it now and working on some lifestyle changes that can maybe get it back into my own control. But at the end of the day, I think I just realized maybe a year into marriage, I have someone who loves me so much, and it was never about what I looked like. I have a family who loves me so much, and it's never been about my size. That's not why the people who love me. It's really everything else that they love about me, and so that's kind of where the poem came from, was there are these moments where I've been big, one way or another, and it's been positive. It's been good for me. It's been good for it's been good for the people I love. And, and that's what I want to love about myself, not how I look.
When I was at that event, I was like, it is clear that this man is madly in love with this woman, because you guys are up there on stage. And two, you are beautiful, Paige. I struggle with insecurity a lot. and it's funny because, granted, I didn't have any health struggles with it, so I can't compare completely. And also it's different for men and women. But, it's funny because I was in the same boat. I was like, I need to write a poem that helps to empower myself. You can read quotes and you can listen to songs and read other people's work, but it's really not the same if it's your own words coming to you to help you, because the words were written in a way that knows how you needed to hear them. It's got your whole energy embedded throughout it completely. And so I think that's a really beautiful thing about poetry. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love when poems that were maybe written for the poet, it's a message that the poet really needed to hear or really needed to put out into the world. I love them discovering who else needed it. You know what I mean? Because there's I don't know, I always feel a little bit selfish. I'm like, oh, I wrote this for myself, but that's not really the case. Whatever you wrote for yourself or said to yourself so that you could pick yourself up and keep moving forward, somebody else needs that just as much. And I love that about poetry too.
Is there anything, are there any other ways you lean on poetry or any other outlet to deal with your ongoing, the PCOS, what other kind of daily struggles do you have because of that, if you don't mind me asking?
No. It definitely brings there's the physical changes that happen when you have PCOS, which is really tough. And just as a woman, when you're already insecure and then you see these things changing and it's completely out of your control, that's just any hormonal imbalance is tough to deal with. So there's that. And then this is a ridiculous little anecdote that's coming to mind. But when I first talked to my doctor about so what can I do? How can I just can't keep expanding. This is horrible. We were talking about making some dietary changes and, instead of lifting weights, which is something that I've always loved to do. I've always loved to lift weights at the gym. It makes me feel strong. But he was instead of doing that exclusively, add some long walks. And he was basically telling me to do all the things that I just never really enjoyed, eat fruits and vegetables instead of he specifically was so, when you eat carbs, just so you know, it has a much bigger impact on you than it probably does to the average person. And I don't remember it was insulin resistance, and he was explaining it. This was a while ago, but I remember I was sitting on the phone listening to him basically list off the foods that I should not be having. And he specifically said macaroni and cheese, and I just started crying. And it was it was just this ridiculous moment where I was like, no, I can't do anything I enjoy. But it's honestly just not forced me, but encouraged me to find other things, to try new things and, experiment with different food. And I've been cooking a lot more, and I've loved that. That has been something that, like, my relationship with food has changed so much just by being the one who puts it together myself, which I think Izzy loves. As Izzy, my husband, I think he loves as well, because I'm doing all the cooking. And that's
yeah, you'll be cooking when we're doing poetry workshops. I'm like, this girl's crazy. I mean, I'm glad you're jumping in, but it's like she's doing it all. But I do want to kind of want to ask you more about your relationship with food, because I mean, you and I both know that's something that I struggle with, and I've shared plenty of poems about that. And I think I've made some progress recently, but I haven't gotten to the point to where I'm cooking all the time. I'll usually kind of implement fasting instead, just so to eat less instead of cooking more. Anyways. So I'm just really interested on if you can describe more how your relationship with food has changed.
Yeah.
And how that's influenced like your day to day, in general.
So it's funny because you said fasting, and that's something that, like, at first that's what I was doing. And it was like, just cut everything out because that's what the doctor said to do. And just like only eat in this window. And like, these are the rules. And the more I was focused on like what I couldn't have, the more depressed like I was becoming, because it was like, I can't do this. I shouldn't go to that social thing, because if I go, I'm going to eat, or I'm going to drink, or I'm going to whatever. And then I'm just going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to feel horrible about like all my progress. Right. And so it was like, I was so focused on what I couldn't do or what I shouldn't do. And what's changed a lot in the last really just couple of months, and something that the Grown-Ass Woman poem makes me like confident about, is when I focus instead on adding things instead of subtracting things, then the things that really aren't filling me up, mind, body, and spirit, sort of fall away. So like, I really enjoy a green juice. It's just something that I found along the way that I really like. It's cucumber, celery, lemon, and ginger, and it's super easy to make, and I actually really enjoy it. There's not a lot of fruit sugar in it, so I know it's like a good thing, and so
it's so refreshing.
I just add more green juice to my day, and then naturally, like, me eating a bag of chips sort of just goes away. The last month in July, I was focused one goal at a time. That's my other thing. Just pick one thing, get that down, and then add something else. But last month, my goal was to focus on adding water. The more water I was drinking, the less hungry I was, the more energy I had. And now I'm like, for the first time ever in my life, obsessed about drinking water. And it's just finding things to add, and then everything else, and not worrying about what's happening to everything else, because they kind of fall off. It's weird. It's really weird.
Well, I think that's just a rule of thumb for life, like the way is letting go. It's just finding things to let go of along the way.
Yeah. And add the good things, and the bad things there won't be room for them anymore.
Yeah. And it's really not until you let go and kind of realize how heavy that the boulder you were carrying was. Did you struggle a lot with like any impulses or like needs to go to fast food or like binge eating at all, or was it just kind of the quality of food you were eating?
I think so. For me, it's like my mental health and my physical health are super closely connected, and I think that's probably true for most people. So if I'm really, really depressed or really fatigued and lacking motivation, it's way easier for me to be like, it's easier to just pick up fast food, or it's easier to just eat this, like, whatever's already done kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the motivation to go and put my own food together isn't there. But the other thing for me that's been tough is I definitely have not my proudest moment, but definitely like working on drinking less. And that is something that, you drink more, you eat more, right? One beer's, what is it? Like, one beer's too many, five's not enough. Like,
talking about beers or chips?
But like, that's it, right? So it's all like, I have a beer, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that burger's not bad. That's cool. Everything's good. So working on like just working on all of those, having a healthier relationship with all the things that.
With everything, yeah, seriously. I think food and alcohol were for sure my top two vices, for sure. Does any of that run in your family?
I don't really know, to be honest. I don't know. It's not something that we really like discuss quite often.
Well, I mean, but like overall, like, are a lot of your like for me, I ask because like diabetes is rampant in my family. Like both grandmas have it, a bunch of my aunts and uncles have it. High blood pressure, like it's like it feels like a rite of passage in my family. It's a freaking heart attack, and it's I should have laughed, but like, yeah, and so it's I think that's what makes it like double hard for me sometimes, because it's like when I know I'm not making the right decisions, I see like my future right in front of me, like surrounding me. Yeah. And then so instead of making a productive, healthy decision, I'm like, nah, fuck it. We'll just go to Burger King real quick.
Yeah. And what I will say is like, my dad's whole family is Greek. My mom's family is Spanish. There's a little bit of Italian and Irish in there as well, but it's Greek and Spanish. And those are big families who like we come together around the table. Like that's what we do. So so I don't know what everybody else in my family's relationship with food, and whatnot is, but I definitely know like when we come together, we're coming together around a meal. And when you are a Greek Italian, when it's a Greek Italian meal or a good Spanish meal, it's not necessarily cooked without butter, so it's like bringing good, full, hearty, lots and lots of love poured into those meals, and then spending hours and hours and hours together eating and being together. That's my family for sure. Man. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's just it's just I think that's where the comfort in food comes from.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't realize how deep like the relationship to food was in me until I like there's this one day with my dad. So one his best friend had just passed away like a couple weeks before then. And this was the morning that my grandpa died, his dad died. And I'm at the hospital with my grandpa. He's in hospice. And I was the last one to see him there. And, my dad calls and he's like, hey, let's go get a breakfast burrito. And I'm like, well, I'm here with grandpa. I don't want to leave him alone. And he's like, no, let's just go. I think he knew what was up. So I leave, we're driving to get some food. And, I'm just like feeling for him a lot because like this man just lost his best friend and his dad. Like it really doesn't get any worse than that. And I was like, how you feeling? Like, what are you, just a check-in, and his response was, there's nothing we can do, like all we can do is have a burrito.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? Oh. And so, ever since then, I'm just like, this shit goes deep. And so it really makes me like need to dig deeper. It's like, this is anyways, didn't mean that big of a detour, but
no.
Yeah.
Wow.
Damn. Yeah. So anyways, what are some positive things you've gotten from your family?
I got the best sense of humor ever because of my family. I know that for sure. We're definitely a group of people who always find a way to laugh. I'm working on a show in Long Beach that's called Behind the Mask, and it's going to be coming out in September. And there's a part in there that I'm pretty sure it's going to be in the show. We're still kind of formulating it, so I'm not sure if it's actually going to be in there. But there's a piece that I wrote where I kind of took a couple different poems and smashed them together into like this really long, like 8-minute scene where I'm like sitting in my living room and the poems kind of just happen as I'm in my house by myself during COVID kind of thing. And then the poems just sort of like as I'm thinking different thoughts, the poems are coming out as though they're my thoughts. And in the end, I sort of wrap it all up with this idea that like Just finding a way to laugh when things are tough and when things are hurting, is what runs deep in my family. And that's what my grandparents always did. Like there was always, it doesn't really matter how dark things got, like what the actual issue was. At some point, someone was going to crack a joke. That always was the case. And I love that. I love that about my family. I love that about my relationship with my dad. Like he and I are so similar that, of course, we clash. But at the end of the day, like no matter what we're clashing over, one of us is going to make a joke and the other person's not going to be able to help it, but they're going to crack up and it's going to be awesome. And I love that. That's one thing that I for sure got from my family.
From the play you were describing, it sounds like the character you're playing is more of a poem than it is you. because that's like, I feel like that's the journey of a poem. Like, oh, I'm just sitting here laying down and here it comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was your, actually, I wanted to ask you more about your drinking because that's something I had struggled with a lot. I know when we had that whiskey night, we're like, we got to keep this under control, everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I left super early, remember?
Yeah. It's probably a good thing one of us had to leave early. Otherwise it probably would have turned bad. But how has your relationship with drinking changed? And kind of like what, I mean, I didn't want to ask for like your wall of shame stories, but like what's an event you had that where you knew you had to kind of get it under control?
There have definitely been sevele. I've got a wall.
I'll go there too. I'm not going to ask you like and not answer as well.
But I think so. Trying to think of which, like what I'm comfortable with putting out there for sure. I mean, the truth is like last year and this story, because I shared this poem yesterday, the poem that I'm working on about it last year, the night of my birthday, we were at my cousin's wedding. It was a beautiful night. Everything was great. And we definitely had like quite a bit to drink and we came home and we were, we were being loud or whatever, but everything was everything was fine. Like there wasn't a problem. We were just being loud. And someone on our street called a 911 for a different, I don't know which household it was intended to be for, but the officer showed up at my house and I was drunk and didn't really know how to interact correctly. So it turned out that I was the one who ended up getting arrested, not my husband, which in a typical situation, you would think they would take the dude, but I was the one who was clearly intoxicated. And no matter how many times Izzy was like, seriously, there is nothing wrong in this. Like this has got to be a mistake. There's nothing wrong. She didn't do anything wrong. I didn't we're not upset at each other. Both of us kept saying that. But it came down to like, well, you're clearly intoxicated and we're going to take you. And so they arrested me. And that was a huge
Wait, they arrested you or did you stay in the tank? You got arrested?
I got arrested. It was the local sheriff. So they arrested me and took me to the sheriff's station. And I was there 8 hours, 6 or 8 hours, but it definitely felt longer. While Izzy was figuring out, what do we do? This has never happened. And at least last of all that happened to me. I'm someone who takes so much pride in what I have way too much pride. So, having so much pride about what I've accomplished and what I've achieved and what people know about me and being kind of a very private person before that experience. That was a big moment. And so I spent most of the time that night by myself thinking about who's going to know, who's going to find out, am I going to lose my job? What's going to happen? Is my family going to still love me? What is happening? And then, you have the punk officers that are trying to get me to say, I don't know what the deal was, but they were telling me well, your husband, he ended up coming in and saying that you did XYZ and told me a story. I was like, that didn't happen. And so it was just this weird experience of being completely in the hands of somebody else. And being completely helpless and feeling like, oh my gosh, my whole life is over. And if I had just been able to compose myself when they came knocking at the door, I would have known, actually, we don't have to open the door. Because, you know what I mean? Like, if we had had the wherewithal to really think that all through, they wouldn't have been inside my house, and I would not have been making a fool of myself trying to get them out of my house, kind of thing. Because again, we were fine. We were going to bed. Like, we were, you know, the night was over. We would go to bed. It was just a weird experience.
I know exactly what you mean by the heart attack in the drunk tank, though, where you just think everything's over, because that absolutely happened to me. I was like going all out before leaving for. This is not very bringing an endorsement on myself, but yeah, I was going all out before going to the Peace Corps.
Yeah,
and that night, like, I knew I was too drunk, and typically my MO was always to just sleep in the car. Like, I would take a pillow with me everywhere. And this night I think I was day drinking, and then I was just too gone by the end of the night, and they had no choice but to take me into the drunk tank. Like, I was knocked out when they took me there. I woke up in there like, what the hell's going on? And I thought it was all over. I was like, did I drive? Did I hurt someone?
Right.
I'm not going to the Peace Corps. I just lost my job.
Yeah.
just going through the worst scenario, and then, like, there's no windows, you don't know what time it is, and I'm there thinking I'm like down the street from the bar. I was like, I'll walk home, I don't care, like. But yeah, and it was that was wild. And so obviously everything was okay. I think I just crashed out by a tree somewhere. Yeah, but it took a while. It took a while to get the drinking under control. And I think what a big part of that is my parents raised us very protected from, like, alcohol and all of that. And so, and honestly, I love my family, but as a whole, we're pretty boring. Like, celebrations end by 8 or 9 p.m. You know, like, growing up, I was always jealous of everyone else's, like, Mexican friends who are, like, partying all night. Like, their party's starting when ours are ending. And but it sounds like you had a really great family dynamic growing up in that celebration and drinking.
Yeah.
So what does your drinking look like now at parties, at family events?
You know, it's like day by day, I think, for sure. One thing that I recently discovered was, like, if I'm not upset, I know that sounds stupid, but a lot of, I think, the bad that would come after drinking or over drinking was always deeply connected to past hurts. And so, you know, being combative or being, like, just, you know, angry or sad or whatever after drinking a lot was always connected to past hurts that I hadn't, you know, processed, hadn't dealt with, hadn't healed from. And so the more and really since that experience of being arrested and all of that, like, the more open I am about what's going on, sharing my poetry. Like, I started writing again. What year was this in? That was last year, May 7th, my birthday, 2021.
Wow, you did say that. Yeah.
2021 was the worst year ever. They say your first year of marriage is going to be tough. First year of marriage was like, she got this, all good.
It was like honeymoon, COVID, lockdown, like.
Yeah. You know, but yeah, year 2 was when that happened, and then we also had 2 miscarriages last year, and there was a moment where we thought we were going to have to move, and you know, just financial struggles and all the things that could have gone wrong, and there were a lot of things going on at work, and just where we work is a pretty tough environment as well. So last year was just a lot of really rough experiences combined into one. But I think what I've definitely found is that writing about those things and processing them out loud, processing the things from years ago and way back when out loud, and just being comfortable with, like, it doesn't matter. I can let go of some of that pride. I think I've carried a lot of my own, like, past stories around for so long out of pride and out of fear and out of shame, that when I would drink, those things would start to bubble up, and that's where I would get into trouble. And so now I think there's a movie, I don't even remember what it is, but the line in the movie is it's Reese Witherspoon, and she's like, my dad always said, don't drink to get happy, drink to get happier. Like drink it, basically like if you're already in a good place, cool, yeah, have a beer. Chances are you're not leaning on it for something. And the more I've gotten to that place, like it's a lot healthier, and it's a lot more like actually normal. You know?
Yeah, I'm not gonna allow you to just skip over the miscarriages like that. Just you quickly brought them up and then you just abandoned them quickly. Nice try. But two, before I ask about that, there's one more question about alcohol I wanted to ask you based on what you just said. So I'm curious from your personal experience, I want to know what you think the difference is, whether it was running away from it or if it's like rolling around in it, because for me, I feel like when I would be drinking, I'm escaping things, but I'm also wallowing in it. Like I don't know. That's not I guess it is a very successful escape, but you're thinking about it the whole time. It's not like you're going to a movie for a distraction. It's an escape, but you're not escaping anything, at least in my experience. And so that's why I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't think I've ever really thought about that. Like, am I trying to forget, or am I trying to work up the courage to deal with it? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be different for different times we drink.
Yeah.
But I guess just generally I don't know. It was this. Sometimes I try to be philosophical. Maybe I didn't. Maybe it wasn't worth asking.
No, but I think there's like different moments. Like there is there are social settings where, maybe you're drinking to kind of just be at ease and be comfortable. And so for me, that's usually like what it is. If I'm in a situation where I'm going in already kind of nerve-wracked about a situation or uncomfortable or unsure, and there's maybe fears or whatever from the past, kind of insecurities from the past kind of playing into that social environment, and then there's drinking, that to me is probably more of the like trying to run away from the insecurities and trying to just like get comfortable, and then usually that goes awry, and then and then there's also like the sad image of like binge watching something and just drinking at home and like just maybe by yourself, like drinking alone is never a good sign, right?
Oh my gosh. I remember there was one night I got drunk at my house, my apartment by myself watching what the hell was the movie the singing movie with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, A Star Is Born.
Star Is Born, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that movie made me a mess just because of like the alcoholism in it, and that's kind of how I felt anyways.
Yeah.
So I wanted to actually, one last question on that is sorry, have you ever considered going sober? And have you considered sobriety, and why or why not did you follow through with it?
I definitely have. The work that I do with City Heart, we work with a lot of people who really struggle with like full-on addiction, substance use, and I say that whoever listens to this is going to be like, "Girl, you got it too." Like, don't couch it. But I work with a lot of people who either have already completed substance use programs, or we're trying to help them get into substance use programs. So I see the good that it can be for folks. So it's definitely something that because I work in that environment day to day, is on my mind. It's definitely something I've thought about. I think in the lowest of the lows, I've, definitely done some research and looked into what it would entail. I think my fear, and this is maybe a dumb thing, and maybe at some point I'll come to terms with this fear, but my fear is, if I were to do something like that, like complete a program or commit to complete sobriety or whatever, and then change my mind later, am I a failure? Like that, that would be my fear. Like as soon as I put it out there, then there's this, like, it's again, that pride, I think.
That's real.
and the fact is, the truth is that I know that there's so much built into, there's so much built into a lot of areas of my life where, not that it's required or expected, but that it's part of the fun of it. Like St. Patrick's Day is a huge thing to my family. We're like barely Irish, but we love that holiday. I honeymooned in Ireland when we finally got to go. We went to the Guinness Brewery. Like, there's a lot built around it, around having a fun drinking life. That I guess I'm also afraid of missing out of that too.
Yeah, for sure. That was I had a coworker at my last job. She's been sober for several years, and she said that was the hardest part at first in the beginning of her journey, was just kind of continuously having to tell people, like, no, I'm not drinking, and yes, it's okay. Because yeah, I would buckle. I'd be like, yeah, fuck it, one drink.
Right.
Okay, so thank you for entertaining me on all of those questions.
And can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
I do think that, like, maybe for me, what will happen, and I did a little post about it today, because this is what I was thinking. My husband grows sunflowers in our backyard every summer because he knows they make me happy. And when they're growing, they look so sad. Like, they look so sad and pathetic, and like they almost look like they're dying while they're coming alive. And then, like, literally the next morning, they'll be standing so strong, so tall, like looking right at the sun, and they're beautiful. And I was just thinking, like, that's probably where I'm at right now. I'm probably this first little sunflower that's like, looks like I'm dying. It feels like I'm missing out on everything if I make these changes and these choices. But one day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be this other sunflower. And I'm really excited about that.
Isn't Mother Nature the best fucking poet ever?
Yeah. You better not write my sunflower poem because it's coming.
No, I got my, that's
flower poems for days, but
no, I'm working with a similar idea, but with butterflies.
Okay.
Yeah. So your sunflower is protected.
If along the way sobriety comes, I'm not going to be sad about it. I think I'll be really proud of that. But I think my fear is to declare now, I'm doing this thing because I've failed so many times.
You're fearing a future failure. A future potential.
I'd rather just like I was saying earlier, like, just continue to grow, keep adding the good things, and then the bad things will just sort of fall out.
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I want to double back to, first, you mentioned PCOS and how that has many complications to the female anatomy in your body and your day-to-day, and also with bearing children and difficulty in doing that. And did I hear you right? You said you had 2 miscarriages in the same year?
Yeah, last year.
Dude, that is, oh man. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
That happened. I know I remember hearing one poem, but I didn't get the impression that it was 2 that you dealt with. And so that is, that's a tragedy. And I don't know, I want you to kind of just talk on your experience about that, but you also have a very perfect poem about that too, if you want to share it. Up to you.
Yeah, I'll talk a little about it first, if that's okay. PCOS can make it very difficult. So first, if you have scarring in your ovaries from ruptured cysts or anything like that, or if you have to have cysts like surgically removed or anything like that, you can have a lot of scarring, and scarring can make it really difficult to conceive and then also to carry a pregnancy to term. And so I have some scarring for sure, which already makes things difficult. Then you add PCOS scarring on top of that, and that can make it tough. So fertility is already, like, getting pregnant is already something that is a concern. And, Izzy and I are 12 years apart. He's 41. I'm 29.
He is not 41.
I know. Doesn't he suck? He's the worst. Yeah, he's 41. Everybody always assumes like we're the same age. And I'm like, dude.
Seriously, I thought, wow.
Yeah.
Damn, 41. Okay, way to go, Izzy. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Go
that's
on.
cool. But like, so there's already like this pressure of we had a plan. Like the plan was we're gonna get married, be married for a full year. Then I'm super young, so naturally we would just get pregnant whenever we wanted, and it would be great. And so the idea that the plan was to start having a family, start our family in our second year of marriage. Year 2 is done, and so now I'm feeling like, oh man, but
Behind.
what? Yeah, I'm behind.
Quote
and
unquote behind.
Right. Exactly. So there's that with my situation, but then also, because women with PCOS are so much more likely to miscarry in the very early months of pregnancy, it can be tough, like, to know that you're even pregnant and then you have a miscarriage. And that's what happened with the first one. I actually didn't know that I was pregnant until I was bleeding. And so went in and got that looked at, and it was, they run a blood test or whatever and confirm that, yeah, you have the pregnancy hormone and this is a miscarriage. That's what happened with the first one. And that was, at the very end of summer. And then what I didn't know and what I've learned, and I wish I had known this before, is that, getting pregnant right after a miscarriage, or I think even right after having a baby, getting pregnant too soon can be really, really difficult and probably too hard, because you're like, the lining of your uterus and all the things that you need to be strong and well again are not. They're still healing from what came before. So I got pregnant like maybe a month after that first miscarriage, and didn't realize that there would be any risk involved with that. And it really wasn't until that second pregnancy was over that my doctor kind of educated me, like, hey, we're going to wait this time. We're going to wait probably a good 3-4 months before you like start officially trying again, because we want to make sure that everything is fully recovered and can support it.
Yeah, you want to give it your best shot that you can.
Right. So that second one, that's the one that the silent miscarriage poem is written about, the one that you're referring to. And that was one that, like, we for sure knew we were pregnant. We were going in for the regular doctor visits. We were like looking forward to, it was right before the holidays. We were looking forward to how we were going to tell our family, and really just, trying to be super all optimistic. Izzy's a very optimistic, positive. He's all optimism, and I'm all like, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. It's never going to work. Everything's going wrong. And
you guys are perfect for each other.
And so, like, from day one, I was like, this is probably not going to work. And I was convinced. I was like, I didn't even know I was pregnant the first time, and I was working on my health and everything was great. And my body just like my body can't, it's like I felt like my body can't do it. And I felt like the whole time I was pregnant, like that second pregnancy last year, I felt like I was already feeling like it wasn't going to happen. Like I knew it wasn't going to happen before it was officially not going to happen.
How long were you pregnant?
I was pregnant 11 weeks, I believe.
So what was that like?
The actual number is written in the poem, so let me go confirm that.
What was that like to like wake up and have those conflicting feelings, and not the conflicting feelings, but like you're very much pregnant, but in your mind you're like, this isn't going to work out. I mean, that sounds just like such a insane reality to try to accept every day.
Yeah, it was. And I think like the first time we went in, the first doctor visit where they said, like, we're considering this a high risk pregnancy. We're concerned if it's not growing at the rate that it should be. So we're going to keep a close eye on it. The first any indication that something was wrong, it was like my mind kind of went, well, you knew it, like you knew this was coming. You were right. And there's like this sick sort of weird, like, okay, well, I knew it wasn't going to happen, so I'm not going to get attached. And that doesn't feel right either,
Yeah.
So it was, and then, on the other side of my little world is Izzy going, like, hey, look at this little Rams onesie, we're gonna get it. Look, like just doing everything he can to pour all the hope into the situation that he can.
Your Rams haiku broke my fucking heart.
Oh.
Do you remember that one? I mean, it was just like the short haiku if you want to just spin it real quick, but that one killed me. Especially after like I knew like about what happened,
Yeah. So that haiku is actually called 6 weeks in one day, because that's the date on which they said like most likely this pregnancy is not going to happen. And then it was 11 weeks that at 11 weeks that I like for sure was not having a baby. But 6 weeks in one day, LA Rams onesie, collecting dust, tag still on. Your new logo sucks. That was that one. I was so mad. I was so like, this onesie with this brand new Rams logo, and it was just laughing at me. So,
I want to hear your poem, but first, I still wanted to ask how prevalent is PCOS, and is it genetic? Like, does that run in the family, and is it something people should get checked up for regularly, like anything else?
Yeah. So, to my knowledge, PCOS is very common. Yeah, it's like 1 in 4 women or 10% or something like that. I don't know.
1 in 4 women?
I think, I don't know. No, it's 10%.
Oh, okay. That's even that is a lot.
Googling it while we talk so that I'm not saying the wrong thing. But, but on that note, like, yeah, it's super common. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. Just because it's so common doesn't mean that the experience is common. My experience with it has been totally unique. Mm-hmm. I just recently discovered that a poet friend of mine that I haven't connected with in a while has gone through a completely different experience with it. Some good, some bad, but also very emotional and completely different. And so one thing that, like, if there's anything I can say about it is, yes, it's common. It's very common. But telling someone who has it how common it is not helpful information. And that's
and I hope you don't think that's the impression I was getting. If anything, it was more.
I'm saying this because I haven't had a platform to say this.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's just that. I'm pretty sure I haven't heard of it, but it's just awful to hear when you hear of so many fellow humans that are going through shit. And 10%? Holy shit.
Yeah,
because like we just never talk about it, it's taboo. It's not really taboo, but we don't have any room for grace in people that are grieving like unspeakable things.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, you're still talking about it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I've mentioned your poem a bunch of times, and I want the people to hear it.
The silent miscarriage one?
Yeah.
So a silent miscarriage is a phrase, and that's a term that I didn't actually know until it was happening to me. And what it means is that you've miscarried, or at least your pregnancy has ended, the fetus has died. I don't know the right way to say that, but you haven't passed, like because you actually have to pass everything that's still inside of you. So like, depending on how far along you are, that, all of that has to come out of you. Otherwise it can be very unhealthy. So normally in a typical miscarriage, that all happens very naturally. And it's just all that's usually how people know that they've miscarried is they see it, they experience it, they feel it. But with a silent miscarriage, you're still carrying it. And often what happens is you end up having to go in for a full procedure to have it removed. And that can be a DNC or you can do like a medical, it's technically an abortion. It's the same abortion process where they would remove everything for you, or you would take the same medication to force your body to naturally pass it.
Wow. I know I don't have you for a whole lot longer. So, let's go ahead and jump into the piece so we can have a brief talk after it.
Yeah. Silent miscarriage. A used to be bright yellow kite climbed inside the branches of my backyard tree, clung like a child to its mother, and waited for me to see. It waited and watched while I waited and wondered why my eyelids were suddenly so heavy and my pants getting harder to pull up over my belly, and if this really were it, was I even ready? For 6 weeks and 1 day, that yellow kite waited in my tree. I thought I saw some flickers of yellow tucked in between the green, but dust and dog breath smudged across my back window made it hard to really see, and I was too tired to clean. After 11 weeks and 6 days, I could see it plainly. The tree was bare and the air thin, and I was rising before the sun again. I watched the pale pink promise of a new day float up over my back fence, settle into the treetops, kiss the wildflowers sprouting in the dirt, and then slowly begin digging into the weeds. And there it was, a yellow kite, fading in the arms of a tree it took me years to love, refusing to leave. I thought of the stubborn and stiff upper-lipped little girl I once was, and remembered my dad's sandpaper fingers wrapped around mine, flying our own yellow kites in the park, and I wished I could be that little again. I stared up at the kite in my backyard tree like trying to place the familiar face and realized it needed help to get out. I tugged at its golden rod and bow-tied cord twisting in the wind, but it stuck. I spread myself wide open so it could free fall into my chest, land safely in this world as it slipped into the next. I called it by name and hoped it might fly off on its own. Even when the rain began to fall, it stayed, not moving or breathing or growing anymore. That dumb yellow kite held onto my branches, clung to its roots. Someone else will have to reach up and get it out.
That ending gets me every time. And thank you again for sharing that poem with us and your story with us.
Yeah.
I have a comment or question about the poem, and I hope you don't take it the wrong way.
Of course I will.
We're going to have a mini workshop moment in here. And on that, like, it's so funny about workshops. Someone will pour something awful, and it's like, hey, I think you used the wrong "your" here.
Yeah. I love that. I love it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm doing it. So I couldn't help but notice that while you were reading that, you sounded like you had less life in you than in your other poems. And I wanted to know if that was like intentional because of what you're talking about, what you're speaking about and sharing, or am I just an asshole for asking that?
No, I think I just didn't want to start crying while I was reading it. So the first time I read it with the good workshop group that I was a part of, the first time I shared it with them, it was really hard. I was like, it was too hard. And I had written it that morning, and then I brought it to that workshop class, and I was like, this is all I have, so I have to read it. So I was really struggling to read it. When I shared it with my husband, I couldn't make it all the way through because I know for sure he knows like what specific moments I'm talking about in each of the, I think it's easy to kind of piece together, but like he was there, and so that it's hard. That's a hard one for me to read, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you again for sharing that with us. Yeah. I know you didn't have to. And I wanted to commend you because you had told me when we spoke yesterday about your volunteering. Was that with Rachel's Vineyard?
Yes.
If you want to talk about that and how big of a freaking heart you have.
Rachel's Vineyard is a retreat the intention of the retreat is to provide healing for women who have had abortions. However, it's open to women who have been touched in any way by abortion. And also there are many women who go to this retreat after not only having an abortion, but also having miscarriages. And that is now my experience. When I first started volunteering with the retreat, I hadn't yet had miscarriages, but I had an abortion. And so the retreat is designed to provide a healing space. And I think for those women and for the men who've been touched by that as well, for men who were in the relationship where the abortion took place, or in my case, my husband, who was not who was not in relationship with me when I had that experience, but was planning on marrying me and went on the retreat with me, and was it was really a beautiful moment. He was able to kind of like spiritually adopt my lost child, which is kind of an amazing thing. So it's a beautiful retreat. It's called Rachel's Vineyard.
Spiritually adopt your child?
Yeah, and it's something I'd never even heard about.
What?
Yeah, isn't that a beautiful thing?
That is beautiful. How comforting.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know, but I'm assuming. Yeah.
I mean, in my case, yeah, it absolutely was. There wasn't anybody else. There wasn't another man who was, wanting to be a part of that experience. And so for me, it was like, I'm going to marry Izzy, and I've got this past experience and this past hurt. And for me, I feel like now looking back, I wish that I hadn't had an abortion. And I think, like, I consider that to be a huge loss, a lost child, lost motherhood for myself. And so for Izzy to spiritually take that on with me means that when we talk now about, our 2 lost children that we have together, he talks about our 3. And he's like taking that on as, even though he wasn't there, he wasn't a part, it was years before we met. Like, it's a beautiful, beautiful concept that I had never been introduced to before. And that's what Rachel's Vineyard really has been for me. It's been like, my chapter that I don't know if I think it is a Catholic tradition or a Catholic retreat. I'm sorry. I think that it is completely Catholic, which blows my mind.
Yeah, it's probably the only time I'll ever say kudos to the Catholic Church.
But it is an amazing place, and they make it very safe, and they're so understanding. And what I found when I went on the retreat as a participant was I was the youngest person there. I was the only person in my 20s on this retreat. Everybody else who was going to participating in the retreat was well over 60. And most of them had never, ever, ever told anyone that they had an abortion. They had held on to it for decades. And I am so grateful that is not what had to happen for me. Like, I found a place where I was comfortable and safe and could talk about what had happened in the scenario that led up to my choice. But yeah, it's totally a needed space, and it's not something that's talked about often, like what happens for the women after going through that, whether they made the choice themselves or someone made it for them, or they felt bullied, or whatever the case may be. There's not a lot of conversation about what happens next for that woman. There's a lot of conversation about what she should have done or what should have happened, but healing for the women who go through it is a beautiful thing. And I'm so grateful.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that's one of the probably worst things about our culture here in Western society, is that we're not good at dealing with the aftermath. We will blow everything the fuck up, and and we'll have the news of all of these people going through awful things, but like, there is very little support across the board on helping people deal with things like after such a stressful and traumatic event.
Yeah.
In their life. And so I guess that's where poetry comes in handy for a lot of people like you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
And you did say, so I kind of want to plug you a little bit, because did you mention that you were writing stories about those people that waited decades to share their experience?
That is definitely a project that I have in mind.
Okay.
It's not something I'm currently working on, but so the book that I am working on is really all the stories that I have held on to. And that, I think we were talking about this the other day, like, these are not new stories to me, but I've never shared them publicly. I think this last year of starting to write again, I think family and friends are becoming aware of, like, hey, there's stuff I didn't know about Paige, but I have never really put a lot of these things front and center in my little world. So that's what the book is about. It's about the stories that I never told, breaking them like breaking news, but they're old. So it's breaking old news I think that will be the sort of the branding of the books that I'm planning to put of future books. This one is my stories, but eventually I will, under the same sort of category, the same sort of brand. I want to help people get their stories that they've been holding on to for years and years, because it's not just hurting them, it's robbing someone else of hearing their experience and growing as a result, and that's the benefit that I had of being the only young person at this retreat, is that I got to hear from all of these older women and what they had been through, and the older men who were there talking about what they went through and their.
How many men were there compared to women?
There were 3 men when I went on retreat. 2 were there with their wives, and 1 was there alone, working on healing from an experience that happened with a relationship when he was young, and an abortion that he didn't get to be a part of that decision. He found out about it later and was healing from that.
Yeah.
So that is the future plan, yes, to figure out a way to, under the breaking old news concept.
I love that concept so much. Breaking old news.
Yeah.
That is so good. Okay, I have a final question for you. Since I know we're short on time. If you lost your ability to write poetry, and you wake up tomorrow and you can't write, you don't know how to write. But before that, you can give yourself a Post-it note of advice to try to get you back to where you are today, what you know about writing as of today. What is some advice you would give yourself, whether practical, philosophical, emotional, any kind of advice you'd give yourself to help you get back to the relationship you have with expressing yourself?
It's a weird but good question.
I'm still working on the delivery of this question. I'm murdering it, but I'll perfect it soon enough.
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at it. I really hadn't written. The reason that I show up to workshops sometimes and I'm like, I don't have anything, is because I don't have years and years and years of writing like you all do, because I haven't been writing for a long time. I started writing in high school, and then I wrote a little bit at college, and then I took probably an 8-year break where I just wasn't. I was like, poetry is not something that I do anymore. I don't do it. And
I just write books.
But I wasn't writing anything. I wasn't writing anything creatively. I just sort of abandoned that altogether. And I think I did it because I felt like I'm writing this poetry, these short stories, whatever the case may be, and I can't share them because they're too personal, and I can't tell these stories. So why am I writing them? And so I just stopped because it was hurting me. So I didn't. I guess in a weird way, I took my own ability to write away, because it was like you're putting these thoughts down and you're proud of how they look, and you'll read them to your one friend, but nobody else.
Oh, so to you, it was kind of meaningless without sharing it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what I don't know that it was meaningless.
You were a closet poet?
I don't know if it was meaningless. I think I just felt like the things I was moved to write about were no matter if I was writing about somebody else or a large universal concept or whatever, at some point you fall into your poems, and your short stories in some way. The reader is always going to assume that what you're writing about is it's just a habit. It's just a thing. The reader assumes that you're writing about yourself unless you explicitly make it obvious that you're not. And so I was afraid that if I kept, I was going to keep writing and never sharing it, and that was hurting me, because it was like I'm actually not healing from these. I'm just looking at these experiences and holding on to them inside of myself and in my computer. So I stopped, just completely stopped, and didn't even really talk about it. It's not like my family ever really thought about me as a poet, or a creative writer. I think the journalism stuff, people knew, Paige writes, she's a journalism student or whatever. But I don't think that was part of who people know me to be until I started writing again this last time. And really what I guess the advice for myself would be that I need to stop worrying so much about what everybody else thinks. And it's a huge character flaw of mine. I'm obsessed with what everybody else must think. It's why I can't share something.
Wait, are you obsessed with controlling, with wanting to dictate what they think, or are you obsessed that you won't like what they think?
I'm obsessively afraid of what other people will think about me. It's why I can't bring something to workshop if I feel like it's not almost perfect. Like I can't. I'm afraid. I'm so afraid of everyone going like, I can't do it because I'm
you're
afraid.
Like, no, I'm just here. I'm just going to hear and listen. I'm like, Paige, what the fuck you doing? Get a poem up here. You're like, no.
Because I'm afraid. You guys will be like, oh, Paige lost it. Like,
you clearly haven't been paying attention to the poems I've been bringing because I've been bringing garbage.
That is what was on every head. And so my advice would just be like, whatever it takes, just stop thinking about what everybody else thinks, because it's what you think that matters. And what, like lately I've been focusing a lot more on putting my poems and things on my website and on my social media or whatever, not because I need everybody to read them and say that they're great, but because I don't want to be afraid of what's going to happen when people do hear it, like part of, like I don't want to go and do an open mic and share a poem that I'm really proud of and then worried for weeks and months, like people are going to be talking about that poem Paige wrote about the time she was so drunk, like she, got arrested. Like, like I don't want to be that afraid all the time.
I think that's why I haven't ever shared like my cheeseburger poem in open mic, because I don't want to brand myself as the cheeseburger poem guy.
Well, and that's what's funny is like, that's what sort of happened this last year. I've started sharing poetry and going to open mics again and being a part of the poetry community. And it's been amazing. But the first poem that I shared was the Grown Ass Woman poem, because I was like, this is great. It's positive. I sound awesome. I know that people think I love myself. This is great. Like, this is a great message. And right now that's what's out there. And that's what I get asked to share is the Grown Ass Woman poem.
For good reason. Let the record show I did request that poem. Just kidding. I did. I was like, you offered it. I didn't request it, but just kidding.
I am totally great being branded the Grown Ass Woman poet. I'm afraid to be branded the sad, depressed, drunken poet. That is my fear.
I was already branded as that human for a while, so fuck it.
But I think that's maybe what I'm coming to terms with is like, and that's part of the advice is like, you are all of those things and you're loved anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
I would, it sounds like you need to write a don't give a fuck poem now. Like, this is me, like I think that was actually a big game changer for me, is when I finally found a sliver of hope and like confidence in myself, where like for a few moments I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking worthy of getting anything I want and receiving it. But like, I know those moments don't last much. And so I was in a workshop, so that I wrote a poem about that, about feeling enough. And that poem was like magic to me, because it still comes back to save me all the time, So I would really suggest trying to write some kind of affirmation poem that like all the best parts of you are telling yourself. And yeah, that was powerful for me. And I know you have bars, so you can come up with something sick.
I thank you.
About a dope ass woman or something.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
In Long Beach.
Wait, are you sure? I thought you didn't technically live. I won't argue about that.
Hey, what are you doing?
I'm just kidding.
What are you doing? Oh my God.
No, you live in Long Beach. You are
born and raised.
I don't think any Long Beach residents will say no. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're good. I'm on Instagram, Paige Pelonis, and my website is motheatensweater.com.
Say that one more time.
It's www.motheatensweater.com.
Okay, I will have that in the show notes, but moth-eaten sweater. Why a moth? I'm curious, like, why a moth? Why moth-eaten sweater? Was that a poem?
It's a line in a poem, and it's a line that I wrote in high school a long time ago, and like just always loved it. And I always kept trying to sneak it into. I tried to sneak it into probably like a dozen poems, and just couldn't find one where it was like, this is the one where it goes. Until this last year of starting to write again, and it's in my my poem called "Nobody's Home."
Have you shared that one? Have I heard that one? I don't think I've seen an appearance of moth-eaten sweater in any of your poems I've heard.
Yeah, then maybe not. And I don't think it's on my website. It's on motheatensweater.com, and the line is in there. But it's bitter beaten moth-eaten sweater is how it lands in the poem. And the moth is not so much like the moth is not me. The sweater is more the representation of me and like where I was at this time. And has nothing to do with your butterfly thing, I promise. It's more about the sweater. It's more about the
I'm just here doing a recon. You know what's funny? At first, when I first had that butterfly idea, I was like, because I've obviously told everyone I know now. But at first I was like, no, I don't want someone to steal it. And I'm like, man, let them fucking steal it. Like, no one's going to tell that the way I can tell it and the way that I need to tell it. Like, right. You know what I mean? So it's like, game on, motherfuckers. And maybe that came with some confidence, you know, obviously. But so you have a couple other websites, the City Heart website, your Instagram, or wherever you want people to find you.
City Heart Love is Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of them. City Heart is at City Heart Love. And our website is ourcityheart.org, OUR. So ourcityheart.org. We are also on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn. It doesn't really matter.
Okay, and I'll include all your socials in the show notes and stuff.
Yeah, cool. Very cool.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paige. I know this took us a little while to schedule and get down due to conflicts on both our ends, but I think this was very worth the wait. Thank you for your time and your energy and your vulnerability and all the kick-ass shit you're doing.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate it.
For sure.
It's cool. I'm excited about where this goes, and we will absolutely put an ad for your show in the magazine and on our website and stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think our next episode can be how to find a great partner, because it sounds like you and Izzy are fucking killing it.
He's the great partner that I found. I don't know that he would say. I don't know that it goes vice versa.
I'm pretty sure it does. Thank you. All right, so Paige. Have a great evening, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for listening and being with us today as we witnessed Paige, a grown-ass woman, share her story, her truth, and her hell. I wish there was a moral of the story to tweeze out, a happy ending that heals all the tears, but sometimes life throws us a curveball, and it just fucking sucks. And there might be days that the best we can do is have some whiskey or some macaroni and cheese, or writing a poem even if it's for your eyes only. Whatever it takes to get you through another day. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.